holidays.
There's no place like home.
WVOX Worldwide.
1460 WVOX.
Good afternoon, everyone. You're listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. This is Jack McGuirk along with Ken Kraetzer bringing you this half hour a discussion of issues related to veterans and the active military. And now, here's Ken. Merry Christmas, Ken.
Merry Christmas, Jack, and good to see you here on what's still a beautiful winter day. Sun is out shining here in Rochelle, down Pine Brook Boulevard, and cold up to 30.
Mm-hmm.
I did go jogging this morning, and I learned something the other night that, if your car door freezes, as it did on Friday night, because it would drop from like 50 degrees to 15 degrees in a matter of hours, is you pour warm, not hot water on your door lock to unfreeze it.
Okay.
But the key is not to using hot water that can break the glass of the window, but to use just slightly warm water is enough to unfreeze all the ice around your door handle. And it's funny, I looked it up on YouTube and I found it and it worked.
Huh.
So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah to all our listeners, and hope the holidays are going well for everybody. And we always thank the police, fire who worked through the holidays and still work through the holidays and out in the cold weather. And also our military members who are out serving all around the world on Navy ships, submarines, and Army bases and destinations. A lot in Eastern Europe, backing up the Ukraine forces from nearby in places like Poland, and all around the world. South Korea, where it's going to be pretty cold this time of year, we've got a lot of U.S. forces, so remember them. And we did a mass. Jack was just mentioning it at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church. We streamed the mass 10 o'clock, offered by Monsignor Thomas Petrillo. And always, just in case there's somebody who watches one of our channels can catch the mass where they might not have one, or if it's really cold out for a lot of people. But in memory of veterans who have served on holidays in the past, and also those out serving today. So I thought today, in our second half, we'll talk a little bit about some of the highlights of the year. And Jack, did we miss a show this year? Did we do 52 weeks, do you think?
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, and it's all because of you, because you're here. I think you were here all 52 of the weeks.
Well, that could be, wow.
I mean, maybe you took 1 week off in the summer. I know you covered a couple of weeks when I was away. And really thank you for your dedication and also the excellence of your reporting on the Ukraine conflict this year. You really kept us up to date on what's been happening, and really done a great job of that. I know you got some updates.
Yeah, I'll start off with what's happening in Ukraine. At least 10 people were killed and 55 others injured in southern Ukrainian city of Kherson following Saturday's Russian shelling, officials have said. Vladimir Putin is preparing an order that bans delivery of oil and oil products to countries that impose European Union's price caps, which will make it necessary for Moscow to cut oil production by 5% to 7%, according to the Russian's deputy prime minister. Also, Russian Navy and People's Liberation Army Navy, that's the Chinese Navy, are exercising in the East China Sea, while the Chinese landing carrier strike group continues operating in the Philippine Sea. Last week, the Joint Staff Office of Japan's Ministry of Defense said that on a Russian Navy cruiser, a destroyer, and 2 corvettes were sighted Tuesday sailing southwest in an area 50 miles northeast of Tsushima. The group included the cruiser Varyag, a destroyer, and corvettes, as I mentioned, all part of the Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet. The release added the 4 ships sailed southwest through the Tsushima Strait in the eastern China Sea from Tuesday to Wednesday. The Russian ships were monitored by the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, and the 4 Navy ships were traveling to rendezvous with the Chinese fleet for the Russia-China Joint Sea 2022, a joint exercise in the East China Sea that has been carried out by the two countries since 2012. This year it's from December 21st to the 27th. And Russian replenishment ship is also taking part in the exercise, according to a release by China's Ministry of Defense. But the drills will encompass a wide range of maritime warfare activities along with live firing. Last year in October, both navies conducted joint drills along with jointly sailing in international waters off the coast of the main Japanese island of Honshu. So Russian and Chinese joint naval exercises in pretty close proximity to Japan. Japanese keeping a close eye on that.
Well, it certainly will, and also the U.S. Navy is going to keep a close eye on that. And but that's what it's a concern when you see Russia and China working more closely together on military projects. There's been some friction back and forth, but that is a concern. But it is the way the U.S. is operating to work on naval exercises with its allies in NATO and also in the Pacific. You know, we follow the Pacific Rim exercise that's done amongst a multitude of navies with the U.S. just to coordinate their efforts. Indeed,
and Lithuania's defense ministry has signed a deal to buy Switchblade 600 drones from the United States, becoming the first European NATO member to order that system. Pointing out that they're the first country in the world after the United States to purchase the Switchblade 600. Their combat drones are a new redeployable capability that will give the Lithuanian army and the ability to destroy enemy tanks and other armored vehicles at a distance of up to 40 kilometers. The deal is worth about $48 million. The American company AeroVironment makes the kamikaze drones. It's unclear how many Switchblade 600s Lithuania will receive, but as part of its effort to combat Russia's ongoing invasion, Ukraine has used Switchblade 300 drones in battle. Likewise, other countries along Russia's western front are purchasing combat UAVs. Poland, for example, leased a set of MQ-9A Reaper drones from General Atomics in October and is preparing to purchase the unmanned aircraft.
Those are more like aircraft. Those are full-size planes.
Yeah, and Romania this month inked a framework agreement with Israel's Elbit Systems to buy up to 700 Watchkeeper X drones. Meanwhile, the Lithuanian army acquired Switchblade 300 drones from the U.S. in the near future as well. And this actually comes after Lithuania and the U.S. signed a $495 million deal. We talked about this for as many as 8 of the high-mobility artillery rocket systems. There was also another deal with those rocket systems with Estonia. So you have all these Eastern European countries building up their defenses to protect themselves seemingly from Russia.
Yeah, and it's a good idea. The challenge, and one of the commentators this weekend was talking about the cost of those missiles versus what they're trying to shoot down. And you may have some very inexpensive drones. They're saying could cost $50,000 being shot down by missiles that cost $4 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so whichever country, Lithuania, Poland, or Ukraine, can only afford to shoot so many $4 million missiles because they run out against these swarms of drones. So drone tactics is something that's going to get a lot of attention, and one of the areas that's being used is lasers to knock down drones because they can knock down no matter what size it is, and they can hit many more targets at one time. So you're seeing a lot of the new technology in military warfare being tested out live fire on this Ukraine-Russian conflict.
And the U.S. Air Force said it conducted the first test launch of a fully operational prototype of its hypersonic air-launched rapid response weapon. The prototype hypersonic missile was launched from a B-52 Stratofortress bomber, the wing said, and rapidly accelerated to greater than 5 times the speed of sound. The missile then completed its planned flight path and detonated. Hypersonic weapons can travel at speeds, as I say, greater than Mach 5 times the speed of sound, and maneuver mid-flight, making them much harder to track and shoot down than conventional ballistic missiles and capable of penetrating defenses. Russia and China have heavily invested in developing their own hypersonic weapons, and the U.S. has faced pressure, including from lawmakers, to show more progress on its own hypersonic capabilities, but successful missile test here. And you were telling me before we went on an article you read about Russia looking into hypersonic weapons.
Well, there was an article that we saw that talked about variations of Russian missiles that might be approaching intercontinental ballistic missiles. One of the things in here is this basic piece of science at work called atmospheric friction. I think we're going to talk about it in the second half of the show. Something I wish I'd studied more about in physics, but it's one of the things that's very active is the friction of going through the atmosphere at high speed.
All right, you're listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report at WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. We'll be right back after this brief Fox News break, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460 and heard around the world on WVOX.com. Now, last week, President Biden on Friday signed into law the $847 billion defense policy bill. Last week, we were talking about that with Leo Shane. And this will give the U.S. service members their largest raise in decades. And the bill increases U.S. defense funding by some $45 billion from the request made by Biden earlier this year. About $817 billion is for the Pentagon, and another $30 billion is for nuclear activities in the Energy Department. Its passage comes nearly 3 months after the fiscal year began on October 1st. Now, the NDAA for 2023 gives troops and Defense Department civilian employees a 4.6% raise beginning January 1st and adds new money for special pay and bonuses for some service members, expands eligibility for the military's basic needs allowance, and mandates reimbursements for military spouses who need to reapply for teaching, nursing, and other professional license due to military moves. It's a 4,000-page bill and also boosts efforts to counter China and Russia's military ambitions with heavy investments in new technologies such as hypersonic weapons. We were just talking about that, artificial intelligence, and nuclear weapon modernizations. There was another provision in the bill that rescinds Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's August 2021 order requiring troops to receive the coronavirus vaccine or face punishment, including dismissal from the military. But 8,200 service members were discharged from the military for not getting that vaccine, but now that mandate has been rescinded, there were some Republican lawmakers who tried to include a measure that would force the military services to reinstate those service members who were discharged for not taking the vaccine, but that effort failed. But $847 billion, and we'll have to see how that is divided among the branches. I know the Navy is going to be using a lot of that for shipbuilding, Ken.
Well, they are. In fact, the budget called for more ships to be retained. There was a move to retire as many as 20 Navy ships, and the Congress said let's only retire about half that number. They're trying to extend the life of some of the surface ships like the Ticonderoga cruisers and some of the older Arleigh Burke ships, also some of the supply ships, and also some of the submarines, some of the Los Angeles class that are verging on the 30 to 40 year mark, so that's one of it's a very large defense budget, but there's this mixture of trying to take care of building equipment. The Marine Corps got more vehicles. The Army was looking at wanted more artillery. They call it long-range precision fires. Those are artillery shells that are basically can be directed by GPS. And then the Navy's trying to build more ships. They're trying to add more submarines to the fleet. We covered the keel laying of the new Columbia-class submarine in Rhode Island in June, the District of Columbia, and it's the first of 12 of the new ballistic missile-capable submarines that the Navy is going to build to replace the Ohio class, which is aging, and the first is due to retire in 2027. So they're working 24/7 to actually build those ships.
Mm-hmm.
So the Navy's anxious on that, but it's having the right ships. It's also having, every week you're talking about different missile systems that are being used by adversaries and also by the United States and allies. And there's tremendous development going on in that field. We were talking about hypersonic, and we got to get an expert in to explain how it works. But one of the challenges is that when a plane or a missile flies hypersonic over 1,000 miles an hour, it's generating tremendous friction at low altitude and heat, which in many cases can blow up the plane or the missile. And how you manage that is a challenge. That's why they haven't been developed earlier. We looked at some of the North Korea missile launches, and that's a big story this year, is how many missile launches the North Koreans made. Is they're going high into the atmosphere, several hundred miles, then coming back vertically, a straight drop back right off their own coast. And so that's what a ballistic missile does. So there's a lot of development there. We're going to try and look more into it, but that's really one of the concerns is everybody's trying to build something that can outmaneuver the adversary and every adversary is trying to develop and improve things like the Patriot missiles, the missile system you described that's going into Lithuania, to be able to knock down opponents' missiles. It's not even planes anymore, it's more just missile launches. So that's the story we're going to be following, and really is the cutting edge on where military warfare is going.
Definitely. And speaking of the Navy, the Naval Academy football team has a new head coach. Last week, the Academy officially announced that defensive coordinator Brian Newberry has been promoted to become the next head coach, the 40th head coach at the Naval Academy, replacing the longtime head coach Ken Niumatalolo. Niumatalolo was Navy's all-time winningest coach with a 109-83 career record over 15 seasons, 6 bowl game wins. I think he beat Army 6 times as well. And unfortunately, after the Army-Navy game, I actually saw an interview that Coach Niumatalolo did, and he said right after the Army-Navy game, he was sitting in the locker room, and the Navy athletic director came up to him and told him that he unfortunately was going to be let go. But last week, Navy officially announced Brian Newberry, their defensive coordinator, is now the new head coach of the team.
There was tremendous critique on our pages from West Point alumni who knew Coach Niumatalolo well and respected him and the job that he had done for many years, 25 years at the Naval Academy, first as an assistant coach where he worked with Army current head coach Jeff Monken, and then was elevated to the head coach job. He did very well in that tenure in terms of winning Commander-in-Chief trophies, beating Army, and winning bowl games. But I think what caught up to them is the pressure to in generating revenue and keeping sponsors who look for results. It costs a lot of money to run these programs, and you got to still keep generating TV ratings. And I think they got into that well above the thought that, well, football is another way they teach how to be a good officer, how to be disciplined, how to get through tough days at both academies. I mean, they say that at West Point all the time, that athletics is another way of training future officers. So that was disappointing. Our best, he was very gracious to us, Coach Ken Niumatalolo. We know he's going to get another good job if he wants it, but he's got a great record, very well respected. The new coach is probably a good choice because they elevated the defensive coordinator, so that it helps maintain a continuity in recruiting and also in style of play. The question will be what offensive coordinator Navy utilizes, and if they change their offense. Army made a move this year. They let go their offensive coordinator of many years, Brent Davis. Some people felt that the Army offense had really struggled this year. They had a bunch of injuries which contributed to it, namely Tyrell Robinson, their best offensive player, being out second half of the season. But there are changes made, and that's sort of the nature of life. But Ken Niumatalolo was very, very gracious to us and very well respected in football, as was Brent Davis, and our best wishes to both.
Indeed, and one of the great traditions around Christmas time is NORAD tracking Santa Claus's journey around the world on Christmas Eve. And it all started years ago when a young child accidentally misdialed a department store advertisement and called the unlisted number, which rang Con Ed's operational call center in Colorado Springs. There was actually a misprint in that department store ad that had Con Ed's number. And Colonel Harry Shoup, the director of operations, answered and was surprised by the child on the other end of the line asking where Santa was. And Shoup ordered crew members to check the radars for Santa's sleigh. Tradition has been carried on ever since and grown on to become a critical annual exercise. Now an average of 1,500 people, the majority of them current and former service members, volunteer to answer as many as 150,000 calls asking about Santa's route, as well as to provide social media updates and elaborate tracker on NORAD's website. And TV stations in Christmas Eve will now report NORAD's latest info tracking Santa's location. In fact, if you go on social media, they'll say Santa's now flying over Chicago or New York or Los Angeles.
What a great Christmas holiday event that is. And as you said, it's followed avidly on social media, and even broadcasters will talk about where Santa is on their Christmas Eve reports. But what a heads up officer at the Air Force who realized and took that call and played along with it and realized here's something that we could do. Now it's one of the Air Force's most valuable public relations activities that they do. And it's all because of a heads-up officer who realized and played along with the request of the child. Now I just want to make sure it's our last show of the year. It's hard to imagine. And as Jack said, we've done 52 this year. It's our 14th year doing the show here on WVOX, and we appreciate everyone who has given us this opportunity because it's expanded our opportunities in other areas at military coverage. But I want to, number one, extend our recognition and appreciation to Bill O'Shaughnessy, who sadly passed away this year. What a legacy in broadcasting he left. Pioneer and someone who kept this format of local broadcasting when he could have gone to add national shows. But he kept, our show and shows that go on the air Monday through Friday here on this station. So I just want to say, again, our appreciation and extend recognition to a true trailblazer in broadcasting, Bill O'Shaughnessy, the owner of WVOX and general manager for many, many years, and to all his family, David, Don, Cindy, and everybody who helps us here, and Jack on the board today has been a big help. And I want to thank you, Jack, again, as I did earlier. You really did some great reporting, very dedicated. You really gave some insight into the Ukraine war. You could write your own book now on. Hopefully we'll see that this war ends peacefully in 2023. We saw the President Zelensky at Congress gave a great speech, but let's all hope. I mean, that's my number one wish going to 2023 is that war resolves peacefully.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the CaMMVets Radio Report on WVOX AM 1460, heard around the world on WVOX.com. Remember to check out our Facebook pages, CaMMVetsMedia, our Sea Services page, our Iona Basketball Report page, and our West Point Football Report page. And until next week, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and remember to thank a veteran.